5, 4, 3. Hi, everybody. Dugroz here with Dugroz Reports. Welcome to my Saturday morning live stream. Today is Saturday, September the 27th, 2025. And I'm reporting live from my house. Good to see each and every one of you on board today. You might notice I look a little different. I have finally upgraded to the paid version of StreamYard. So no StreamYard logo up here in the corner. And I have the option of doing the rectangle, the widescreen, instead of the little, instead of this doodad right here where I'm smaller. So let's go around the horn and see who's on board this morning. I see Mike Newland. Good morning, everyone. And Dugroz. It's a nice, cool day in Texas. Awesome. Caterpillar reps on board, as is Double Animal Fries. A couple people saying hi to each other. Hey, Mike. Let's skip over that. Nurican is here. Dad on a Mission. Ian M. Seabass. Mojo. Caterpillar rep. Ian says, I'm doing one of my biggest redemptions today. Right now, as we speak, 881,000 points for a new furnace and air conditioner installed. That is a big redemption, but hey, you need heating and cooling. Caterpillar wondering what ecosystem that was pulled from. Mi hermano, Cesar Joel is here. Good to see you, brother. And Ian says, cashback, I'll say multiple systems, more of a members only answer. Dem is here. Rel. Cesar reminds everyone to click the thumbs up button to support the channel. I see we got 25 people on board. And every time you click the thumbs up button, the algorithm's like, hey, this is decent. Let's send more people in here. DEM just booked EWR to SIN. Let's see, EWR is Newark, I believe. I'm not sure what SIN is. 2.7 cents per point in business class. Not my best redemption, but it's direct, so I'll take it. Wondering if that's Singapore. Mike from LA says, morning, y'all. Too Easy says, hello, sir. Zezus Christ is on board supporting the algorithm. Ian M drops $1.99 because he's excited about full screen. Celebrate. Thank you so much, Ian. I think I could use one more light here. I feel just a little on the dark side. I feel like I'm on the dark side. I don't know if that did a lot, but maybe did a little something here. Keep on going. And Kevin Hawthorne is on board from Lakeland, Florida, like usual. Before I go too much further, let's save that for later. Let's just dive right in. Why don't we? Every Saturday morning, I start with Dugroz data points. This is anything around the world of points and miles that is generally interesting to me. Some are personal, some are found online. Our first data point is courtesy of Danny, the Deal Guru. The Amex personal green card is as high as a 60,000 sign-up bonus. I believe it's 3 months to hit $6,000 of spend to get 60,000 Amex points. I don't know if that's an all-time high. I just have this feeling that it's been higher before, but if anybody knows for sure, you can correct me on that one in particular, but just worth noting. Now, of course, the way Amex does it nowadays, it's kind of targeted, so you might get 60,000, you might get 40,000. Probably wouldn't do it unless it was the higher of the two, the 60,000. Danny the Deal Guru also lets us know that the Amex Blue Sky card is being converted to the cash magnet, whether you like it or not, in January. And I've seen this a couple times. I've seen it on Danny the Deal Guru. I've seen it on Frequent Miler. I've seen it on Doctor of Credit. And nobody's explained what the Blue Sky card is. I've never even heard of it. So I'm hoping somebody on board can tell me what the Amex Blue Sky card is. What's kind of weird, though, is that the cash magnet is closed to new applicants as well. So they're converting people in a closed card to a different closed card. Makes you wonder if the cash magnet's going to make a comeback. Not that that was a particularly exciting card. It was 1.5% cash back on everything. Not a card that earns ultimate rewards. DEM clarifies, yes, Singapore. I believe it's the longest flight in the world. Newark to Singapore. That's a long one, that's for sure. Dad on a Mission asks, are you going to the U of Arizona versus Iowa State game today? I am not. Thought about it, but just too many family obligations and responsibilities here around the home. So we'll gather around the television at 6 o'clock Central and watch. But thanks for asking. Yuri G says, hi, guys. Good to see you, Yuri G. Thanks for being on board this morning. Next Dugroz data point is this hat tip Doctor of Credit. Citi is automatically giving people who signed up for the Strata Elite a sign-up bonus extension if you are impacted by that tax form. So a little background. A lot of the people who were early adopters of the new Citi Strata Elite were eventually sent a form they have to fill out, which gives Citi permission to obtain a transcript of your taxes. And the idea there is they probably thought some people were doing some funny stuff, like exaggerating their income, and they put a hold or froze your account while doing so. They can only send it to you by mail, I've heard. I didn't apply, so it didn't impact me. But it would be super frustrating if you only have 3 months to meet a sign-up bonus, and by the time they mail you a form, you fill it out, get it back, and they review it, you chop a month off of that. So at least they're kind of making right by it and giving you an extra month. Ian says, to Dem, that's an amazing flight. We did it less than a year ago. Really was amazed how easy it was. Yuri G just got back from Belize. How was the Vacasa? I believe you're going to try one out, and let us know if there was any snags or anything along those lines. Next Dugroz data point here. We have a new offer on the Marriott Boundless card. The Marriott Bonvoy Boundless will give you 125,000 points plus a 50K free night certificate after spending $3,000 in 3 months. This impacts me personally because I just signed up for this card recently and got a much suckier offer of just 3 of those free night certificates. I would way rather have the points. Basically, take away 2 certificates, get 125,000 points. A, they're more flexible. B, they don't expire. C, you're not capped at 50K, so you don't have waste in there. I'm going to try doing a private message directly to Chase and see if they will honor it, since it was only like a 2-week gap. Have any of you had success? I know there's different data points on ink cards and such, but specifically on co-branded cards like Marriott with Chase, getting them to honor a sign-up bonus that's better than what you got within the past month, let me know. Got a weird screen here by accident. I apologize. Do you say DEM or do you say DEM? Citi has some insane transfer bonuses right now. Avianca, Turkish, and Virgin. Thanks for the preview. Stacy's Travel Points is here. I'm here for the iPrefer chat. I think that program can give Hyatt a run for their money, especially 1 to 4 with Citi. Thanks, Stacy. Much appreciated. And hey, what a segue. Our theme of the day today is all about booking preferred hotels. This is like fancy pants type hotels that you can book sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly using Citi points. And if you're not sure how that's done, I will get into that. Go ahead and keep on clicking the thumbs up button. We've got 34 people on board, which is okay, but not particularly great. Zizas Chris says that Citi automatic extension was found to be false. Not all cardholders receive the extension automatically. Okay, thank you for the clarification. So if you're impacted, I would call in and ask about that. DEM says to Ian, that's awesome. We're excited, looking forward to it. How were the seats? Yuri says, my player 2 was unblocked yesterday, but the second card was still blocked. I'm assuming we're talking about the Strata Elite here. So I called and spoke to high risk line management and they unblocked it. I will try today. Well, good luck with the second card. Zizis wants to know, what's the long-term play for your Marriott Boundless? Do you stay at Marriott much? Oh, that's a good question. I was just kind of assuming everyone knew, but I shouldn't do that. This is my path to getting the Ritz-Carlton card. So no, I'm not a Marriott person. Math-wise, for me, I really like corn, but also the Ritz-Carlton card makes way more sense. Maybe not way more. I think it makes more sense than keeping my CSR for another year. The stars aligned well with my CSR. My annual fee posted in August, so it was before it was increased. So I get to test drive the card for just under a year with the new benefits. And then about the time I can switch my Marriott Bonvoy Boundless, this apparently means switch, over to a Ritz-Carlton card is about the same time I'll get the renewal on the CSR. So it'll be this perfect compare contrast opportunity to see if I prefer the Ritz-Carlton. Same insurance on a net basis, much less expensive, which probably suits me better. So it's kind of a grand experiment that I'm trying. Let's see. This is about that Singapore flight. Ian says, massive. The fact that the seats folded toward to make a little bed is different, but once it was switched, I would just sit up and sit Indian style. Can you say that? Loved it on par. Dem. It's not Dem. It's DEM initials. Okay. Ian says it was better than Emirates. And Yuri says the Vacasa was a mixed bag. I arrived to first Vacasa and not able to open the lockbox, Al Gore lockbox, with a code they provided. So I pried it with a screwdriver from my SAK, SAK, like Saks Fifth Avenue screwdriver. I don't know. I'm sorry you had to pry that open with a screwdriver. That reminds me of the time I got locked in a bathroom by accident inside a 100-year-old house, which was an Airbnb in Yorktown, Virginia. And I basically just used my shoulder to force the door open and broke the door jamb. Not my fault. Mike Newland donated 20. That's 20. Dugroz reports membership. Celebrate. That's just as good as a $60 super chat. Thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it. And hey, that's a good transition. You can support this channel a variety of ways. One of them is by becoming a channel member, a Dugroz diehard. It's only $3 a month. You can cancel anytime. What does that get you? Well, you get members first videos. So most of my videos are released a full day, if not more, early. I did one about the edit pricing that just released yesterday to the public, but it released on Wednesday for channel members. So you get those early. I'm more likely to respond to your comments and engage you offline and those kind of things, like on Discord if you're a channel member. And then the main thing is you get over 55 members only videos. I made one last week. I don't have the thumbnail with me, called Am I Too Poor for Points and Miles? Maybe I can find the thumbnail here if I look carefully here. Yeah, I've got it right here. So there it is. Do you think that video looks interesting? The only way to watch it is to be a channel member. Again, $3 a month, cancel anytime. Just click the join button on any of my videos. If you join while this video is going, we'll all have a little celebration together. And another way to support the channel is with a super chat or super sticker. Just find it down below, and that brings people into the algorithm. Even small gifts of 99 cents, $1, $5, they're all appreciated. And then if you look in the description box, I have a tip jar if you want to support me either anonymously or just you want me to receive a higher proportion of the income. Tip jar only takes about 6%, whereas YouTube takes anywhere from 30 to 40, 50%. You can do that. I should also mention that the tip jar did receive an anonymous donation earlier today. I don't know who it was, but if you look up here, someone who just goes by Tipper donated $100. Celebrate. Thank you so much, Tipper. I appreciate it. This Mike Newland one was from last week, although I appreciate that one too. So if you want to be anonymous with the tip jar, you can find that link in the description box, but you don't have to. All right, now let's get back into what we were talking about. How far along did I get? So this is my next Dugroz data point here. This is US Bank, and I've been kind of mentioning this a few different times. They're still having issues, aren't they? So this is on my dad's checking account. You can see an external transfer, $1,451, $1,451. He didn't do it twice. I didn't do it twice for him. It's just a display error. And then down below, here's a Amex payment for $3,349 twice. Again, it doesn't affect the running balance, but for like 2 months now, the US Bank website has just been showing everything in duplicate. So if you're watching US Bank, please get your act together and fix that. Next Dugroz data point here. This is just something to help you remember that if you have a business platinum card from Amex, you get Dell credits. Prior to July 1st, you would get up to $200 no matter what. From July 1st on, you get $150 on the first $150 and then $1,000 if you spend $5,000, which obviously that second tranche I'm not going to do. I was curious if it would trigger the $150 if you already used $200 the first half of the year, and I'm here to tell you that based on my research, it does, although it hasn't hit on my wife's account yet. The reason this is all coming up is that my wife's annual fee just recently posted on our business platinum. We're not planning to keep it for another year, so I actually have until tomorrow to downgrade, and I'm cutting it real close. I'm like, come on, Dell credit, please post. Bought 2 Nintendo Switch Pro controllers, which is like $161, so netted out to like $11. Probably will sell one, keep the other one. I've heard they're backwards compatible with the Switch 2, which is good news, certainly. So remember to do your Dell credit if you have a business platinum. DEM says, Mike, you're such a beast. Ian agrees. Yuri G says, the second Vacasa was kind of odd. It was a new property and the location was showing in the middle of the village of Placencia one day before they send a code and exact location. Interesting. Let's see. Yep, Virgin upper folds up 2 in the Dreamliner. I'll kind of let that conversation drift off to the side now. Stacy says, if I were to do the RCC, I'd match it Ritz-Carlton card with an Amex Brilliant for 285 free night certificates, but I still have yet to pull the trigger on the Brilliant. That's a decent strategy. Don't know if it would be for me or not. Rel got a membership from Mike. Zizis Christ gets a membership from Mike. Thank you, Mike. Yuri says, so they sent an address which doesn't exist. I was trying to find the right location and found it on Booking, and it was around 7 miles away north of the original one. Ooh, yeah. I know they don't show you the exact location until Booking, but usually at Booking, you get the exact location. Maybe things are just a little different there in Belize. Dad on a Mission is celebrating 9 months of membership and says membership is awesome. Celebrate. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Dad. Ian is saying you are no longer too poor for points and miles. That's right. Half of my wealth comes from Mike Newland himself. Yuri says, meanwhile, Vacasa was claiming original location. At the end, local concierge contacted me and he confirmed the location is 7 miles north. I was not prepared to go there, so he offered to cancel. I canceled and flew to Belize City, which was a mistake. I booked a Ramada in Belize City with Wyndham points. A few days later, I received the points back from Vacasa, but I'm still 2K points short. TBC. I'm not sure what TBC stands for. QC Man gifts 1 Dugroz Reports membership. Celebrate. Somebody got that $3 spot. Chad Pennycuff's arrived. Howdy. How you doing, Chad? Good to see you on board this morning. Next Dugroz data point. This is one of a personal nature. I didn't prepare a skit or anything, but I was thinking of putting like a priest's robe and saying, points and miles, Father, forgive me, for I have sinned. What have you done, my son? I cashed out Amex points. You cashed out Amex points at 0.6 of a cent each? No, it's not that bad. My wife has a business platinum, so I cashed it out with the deposit with points feature into the business checking account. So yes, it's true. I cashed out 100,000 Amex points. That gets me $1,000. So I'm just trying to help people not feel guilty about cashing out penny points when you need them. For anyone who's new to the channel, I will mention that my travel goal is a net zero cost to my family budget. So I have to account for every single penny when I travel. I haven't got the final numbers from my family's summer vacation where we went to England and Austria. But based on a estimate, it looks like it's going to be about $3,000 out of pocket. So you might think that's a lot of money, but I would challenge you to fly business class one way and premium economy one way with a family of 4 to Europe and back and spend 10 days there with teenage boys and only put $3,000 out of pocket. So I have to count for that $3,000 somehow. Right now, I've got roughly $1,300 in my travel savings account that I can use from sign-up bonuses, cashback, etc. I've got around $700 in my wife's Wells Fargo Signify that I can cash out. But that still leaves me about $1,000 short. So to hit that net zero, I had to cash out some points. And before we cancel my wife's business Platy card, I wanted to cash that out because I don't have plans for these points. And I realize Amex points can be super valuable. So some of you are having heart palpitations, but this is the way it works for me at present. Catching up on comments here for just a moment. Let's see. Yuri says, Maya Island Air is very flexible with flights. You can fly on different flights on the same day or even a different day. I flew a Cessna Caravan and Glipsland Aeronautics GA8 Aerovan. Interesting. Oh, here's the pun of the day from MR. Unbelievable. That's rough. Bill Wright says, to be continued. I'm not sure what's to be continued. Yuri's story or my story? Yuri says, on my flight to Belize City, I was the only passenger. You can also sit in a second pilot seat. That would be fun. Cocktails in the cockpit sound quite opulent, says MR. Miles to the Mouse joined as a new member. Celebrate. Thank you so much, Miles to the Mouse. I think I recognize you from somewhere. Let me tuck that away. All right, we've got 54 people on board. Keep clicking the thumbs up button. Next Dugroz data point. I had mentioned this earlier in the month, but it's always good to revisit things. You can purchase Choice Privileges points. This is Choice Hotels through September 29th. That's 2 days from now. So I don't know if it's beginning of the day or end of the day. I would purchase it by end of tomorrow to be on the safe side. Let's see here. So I just wanted to remind people of that. I did go ahead and do that. So here is what I purchased. I purchased 37,000 points, and that cost $209. And I did the math for you. It's down here. That's 0.57 cents per point. Now, why 37,000? I had 13, 16,000, something like that, and I needed to get up over 50,000 for a potential redemption that I'll show you on the next screen. I got up to 54,000 after this purchase. So I bought in at 0.57 cents per point. And this is what it looked like once I confirmed. Balance after purchase, 54. Total cost, 209. I bought 37. Here's the property that is under consideration. This is the Cambria Hotel, Quad Cities in Davenport, Iowa. So I live in the middle of Iowa. The Quad Cities are over here on the east edge, kind of the pig nose of Iowa, you could say. And the reason for that is because there's a chess tournament that my son went to last year. Might go back in the Quad Cities just across the river in East Moline, Illinois. Ironically, they call it the Iowa Chess Classic, even though it's in Illinois. And if we did go there, this is how much it would be. It would be 24,000 points per night, which is 48,000 for 2 nights. And then I did the math for you in case you're wondering what that comes out to. It would be $497 and change, which comes out to 1.03 cents per point. So remember, I'm buying in at 0.57 cents per point. I'm using it 1.03. So that's 181% of the purchase value. I think that's pretty good, getting 81% more than what you paid for in value. And if we end up not going to this chess tournament later this year, oh well, I've got some points over there at Choice Hotels that I can use. And that might play into our main event a little later as well. So don't have shame buying Choice Hotel points. They can certainly be valuable. Bill Wright says, LOL, no, I don't know what TBC is from you. TBC, to be continued. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Misunderstanding. Where were we? To be continued. Okay. Mouse of the Mouse says, finally evaded all the free membership so I could join on this profile. Okay, I see what you're talking about. Thanks, Chad. Miles to the Mouse is the alter ego of Chad Pennycuff. Miles to the Mouse is to Chad Pennycuff as Superman is to Clark Kent. Let's see. I might skip over a few of these comments about specific airlines and redemptions just because need to get moving along here. Ian says, I was just shut down by Uphold, too many debit loads. I can't remember exactly what Uphold is, but sorry to hear that. I think that's something where you can upload debit cards or something. QC Man said, would the purchase of Choice points have to be covered from your travel savings account? Yes. So the way that I'm handling it is I will take it out of my travel savings account because, again, net zero. If I end up using it for my son's chess tournament, then my travel savings account will get reimbursed by the family budget, because going to like a sporting event or an extracurricular activity for a child, that's not really travel. That's more of just a normal family function. But thanks for asking. I do track all that stuff. Stacy says, scrolling socials and listening, a post on Facebook says that iPrefer does status match. Hilton Diamond equals iPrefer Titanium, their highest tier. Hey, I'll tuck that away. I actually got a status match to iPrefer Titanium thanks to Matt Clausen, because he let me know like just under a year ago. just over a year ago, excuse me, that anyone who has the Aeroplan card could get iPrefer Titanium for like a year, and I took advantage of that. Riff Raff EH is here, says, what's your best guess on when we will find out US Bank's transfer partners? Middle of December, because that's when your 1.5 real-time rewards ends on the Altitude Reserve. So I'm guessing those things would coincide. Zizus Chris said I had a Mitch McConnell moment. I don't know what you're talking about. Zizus. All right, let's keep going here. Next data point. Capital One has added 3 new transfer partners: Japan Airlines, Qatar, and iPrefer. So to be a little more specific, Japan will be 1,000 to 750, although there is a 30% transfer bonus until October 22nd, making it almost 1-to-1. Qatar will be 1-to-1. iPrefer will be 1-to-2. And that's, again, what we're talking about today. This could be useful in like a topping off situation, but 1-to-2 is not really very good based on how iPrefer does things. 1-to-3 would be on the low side of fair. 1-to-4 would be on the high side of fair. Plus, given that Citi transfers 1-to-4, I'm not sure why Capital One negotiated such a crappy rate, unless they just wanted to say, hey, we have more transfer partners. But at least it would be an option, like if you came up 1,000 points short or 2,000 points short on a fantabulous redemption and just needed to top it up. That'd be a lot better than nothing. By the way, if you're wondering why so many of my screenshots are up and down, I've mentioned this before, but I go to my son's football games on Friday nights in the fall and have to do all these on my phone, whereas any other time of year I'm doing it on my computer, if you're wondering why the screenshots are the way that they are. Next data point. This is from Frequent Miler, hat tip to them. Wyndham. Oh, the last one was hat tip Doctor of Credit. Thank you, Doctor of Credit. Wyndham is out with a promo. You can earn 7,500 bonus points when staying 2 nights up to 4 times. And to be a little more specific, 7,500 points after a 2 nights paid stay. They don't have to be on the same booking. If you have a Wyndham credit or debit card, you earn an additional 7,500 points. Now, they said somewhere that additional 7,500 isn't like in the headline of the promo, but it's down the terms and conditions. Let me give a little more detail also from Frequent Miler here. They also say there's currently a targeted Amex offer for Wyndham, which gives you $20 back on $100 or more in hotel spend. Now, I tried this once before. I did a mattress run, the only one I've ever done, at a Wyndham property in Colfax, Iowa, which is about 20 minutes east of the greater Des Moines area. Just went in, ruffled the sheets, checked in, left, didn't actually stay. And when I did that one, there was a problem. It was like so many points for doing it, and that went through fine, but so many more points for having the credit card while doing it, which I did have. They never honored that second part. I think it was like 3,000 extra points. I remember Stephen Pepper from Frequent Miler went to battle and like filed a complaint with some government agency, the comptroller of the currency or something, and Wyndham did reluctantly give him his points. But I'm like, this isn't worth my time and effort, so I just let it go. But it did give me pause and a little bit of concern to think to myself, I don't know if I'm going to do any mattress runs with Wyndham in the future. They don't seem that trustworthy. But hypothetically, if you math it out, I did some looking. There are some Wyndham properties. They're not necessarily the nicest ones. It might be like a Days Inn in the bad part of town for right around $50 a month. $50 per night. So let's say that you found one of those, you did 2 nights, that'd be exactly $100. You get $20 back with this Amex offer, which you may or may not be targeted on. So that's $80. You get 75,000, that's 15,000. Wyndham also gives base points at a minimum of 1,000 points per stay, not per night. So you're gonna get at least 16,000 points. If you take $80,000 and divide by 16,000 points, that is exactly half a cent per point, according to my handy dandy calculator here. So sometimes you can buy Wyndham points around like 0.65, 0.71. So it's a little better. You can also only buy a maximum of 100,000 Wyndham points per year. So if you need to do that for a Vacasa or cottages stay over in the UK, or you just want to do it at Wyndham itself, might be worth it. I'm probably not going to do it. If you think about it this way, to earn 16,000 Wyndham points, I would have to spend around $2,000 on my Wyndham Earner business card at 8x. That's about 4 $500 gift cards, so that seems like an easier path to me. But if you're into mattress runs, that might be a good option. Let's see here. I'm going to catch up on comments real quick here. MR says, status matching everything every year is always a cheat code to always feeling like a fancy person when I travel. Good idea. Tashar Seth's on board. Don't think we've met before. Good to see you. Yes, I status matched last month to iPrefer Titanium from Hilton Diamond. Lol. Jacob W's here. How you doing, Jacob? Hi, Dugroz. We have the One Key Plus, but we're also possibly looking at the Citi Strata Premier. It seems like if we are fine with Expedia, that's the better card, though. Oh, thoughts? I feel like I need to make a whole entire video on that topic. Jacob, I don't know if you're into transfer partner arbitrage. If you are, the Citi Strata Premier is superior. If you're not, the One Key Plus is superior. There we go. Yuri says Citi has 1 to 4 and iPrefer. That's true. Tuck that away. We'll talk about that in our theme of the day. Yuri says I'm going to spend another 8 nights in an iPrefer in Medellin soon. Medellin, where is that located? I feel like that's how you say it, but I don't know that for sure. Is that one of those islands in the Mediterranean? QC Man says Lionel Hutz is negotiating these transfer partner deals for Capital One. No, money down. I'm very happy I'm old enough to get that joke. Me too. QC Man is happy. Tushar says you get 7,500 points per 2 nights, not 7,500 points a night. If I said a night, I apologize. But yeah, you would get 7,500 from the 2 nights, 7,500 from having the credit card. That's 15,000. 1,000 from your base. That's how I got to 16,000. Is the football son also the chess son? Yes, it is, QC Man. Yuri G says, iPrefer had some problems when booking another property in Medellin. It was showing available. I tried to book, but my points were gone. The booking failed. That's not great. Jacob says, we are into transfers. Thank you. Okay, well, then you're going to prefer the Citi card. Yuri says, it took me a few days to get the points back. I tried to book via an agent. It failed for him too, so I finally decided to book a different iPrefer where I have already been. Medellin is a city in Colombia. I should have known that. Hey, we're back over 71 people. It's working. It's working. It's working. Little Anakin. Next data point. I think that's the one I already did. Next Dugroz data point is... Oh, nope, that's not new. I already mentioned that one. Already mentioned that one. Trying again here. Okay, Citi has a transfer bonus to Virgin Atlantic, which is 1 to 1.3. So that's a 30% transfer bonus going on right now. I cut off the part of the screen that shows the end date, but if that's something where you have a booking coming up where that might be helpful, look into that. I probably wouldn't do it speculatively, but that's up to you. Need to get stronger glasses here, folks. Citi also has a 50% transfer bonus to Turkish Miles and Smiles, so 1 to 1.5. That could be really good in some situations. And those are both hat tip Doctor of Credit. And then same ecosystem Citi, but this one's hat tip frequent miler, 25% transfer bonus to Avianca. Some people love Avianca, but they do expire, so just use a little bit of caution along those lines. QC Man wants to know if Medellin was Pablo Escobar's hometown. I don't know. Yuri says the maximum you get from the Wyndham program is 37.5. That's good to know. MR also says he's not a drug historian, so not sure. Good to know. Mike Newland drops a $1.49 super sticker. Celebrate. I appreciate that. By the way, I don't remember if I did a celebrate for my anonymous $100 tipper this morning, so I'll do it now. Celebrate. Thank you, anonymous $100 tipper. I really appreciate that. So the reason Mike donated $149, I assume, is because I have had a standing offer that anyone who donates exactly $149 gets 1,000 Dugroz points. So boom, there you go. Thanks, Mike Newland. 1,000 Dugroz points for you. Double Animal Fries says, love your content, Dugroz. Thank you, sir. Awesome. Celebrate with a $2 super chat from Double. And then Charles Bush says, Amex Green has had 60,000 plus 20% back on travel and transit up to $200, but that may have been only once. Thank you for the input. I thought there was a better offer. I also thought like with the like use an incognito window, use different browsers. A few people who have been able to find like 70, 75,000 in the past, but maybe I'm just imagining that. We're getting towards the end of the data points segment here. Got to take a breath and blow my nose. So bear with me just a second. I think I'm talking a little too loud, a little too fast. I don't want my heart rate to go up again. US Bank is offering a $750 sign-up bonus on their Triple Cash Rewards business card. This is significant because it's usually $500 for the sign-up bonus, so it's an extra $250. I cut it off, but if I remember correctly, you have to spend a strange amount. I think you have to spend $4,500 in either 3 months or 4 months. I don't remember which one to get this sign-up bonus. The reason this is significant is twofold, maybe threefold. One, this is a business card that does not report to personal credit, so this won't impact your 524 or any other ecosystem's informal counting of how many applications you've done recently. Secondly, the sign-up bonus itself, I mean, $750 is $750. Thirdly, is it is 0% for a year. So if you're doing some cash flow things or put it in a money market, arbitrage type stuff, that's always great for cash flow. And then fourth is it seems churnable. You can only do one at a time. But if you've had this card in the past, cancel it, wait 6 months or so. It seems like you can do it again. My personal data point is I've only done this twice. And that's roughly the pace I went at. A year, cancel, wait 6 months, do it again. Uncle Luke has said it's churnable. Whether or not it is, I can't say for sure, but it seems like it is. QC Man says to MR, sure you're not. Oh, he's not a drug historian. Gentleman Explorers here. Clearly you have not watched Scarface. Medellin highlighted nicely there. Jonathan Martinez says, hey, Doug, big hugs from Spanish Harlem / Manhattan. I just got the Amex business green card. The plan is to receive upgrades. I hope that works out for you. MR says, every time I pull out my Hilton Aspire, I always say hello to my little friend. I've never watched the full movie, but I know that quote. Tushar says, Citi is going wild with transfer bonuses right now. I love to see it. I took advantage of the Turkish bonus. I got 2 business class seats from New York to Istanbul in their A350 suites for 87,000 Citi thank you points total. 2 for 87? Hey, that's under 45 each. That's actually really good. Lowering my camera because I have bad posture at present. Yuri G says, I like Life Miles, but Avianca itself is pure junk. I will definitely transfer to Avianca. And then I'm assuming you would use that to book some other airline. Rel says, Avianca reminded me of Frontier with newer planes. Ian says, do you need a U.S. bank checking account? That's a good question, Ian, and I apologize. I don't know the answer. I've had one for multiple decades, so that's really not an issue for me. Double. Hey, he provided a data point here to Ian. I got the triple cash without a bank account, but already had the altitude reserve. Flying Ryan's on board. How you doing, Ryan? Howdy. Thinking on hopping on that triple cash again with that higher offer. It's a pretty good one, I'd say. Yuri says, I watched Scarface. Medellin was fine so far. I've also been to Barranquilla and Cartagena. Medellin is good compromise between these three. My high school Espanol is coming out. I just actually rode in an Uber or Lyft yesterday, and when I got in, the driver said, no speak English, and I could tell because the directions were Spanish. He spoke Spanish. I thought about breaking it out and giving it a shot, but I'm like, what would I say? Hablo Espanol un poco? I mean, where do I go from there, you know? Ian says, I'll give it a try. Awesome. Next Dugroz data point. Rove Miles is offering a transfer bonus, 20% to Finnair or Air France KLM Flying Blue. I thought this was significant, not because the transfer bonus is that great. I mean, places transfer to Air France, KLM all the time. I don't know a lot about Finnair. They're Avios now, so that's a way to backdoor into Avios. But I thought it was interesting because as far as I know, this is the first time Rove Miles has ever offered a transfer bonus. Rove Miles doesn't have their own card, but they do let you book like hotels, flights, rental cars in their portal, or you can use a shopping portal to earn lots of transferable miles. If anybody has known of a prior transfer bonus with Rove Miles, by all means, please correct me. I'm having some microphone issues. It keeps hitting my hands. Sorry about that. MR says, I only remember Cartagena from that amazing 80s movie, Romancing the Stone. Ian says, can you fund U.S. bank account with credit card? I don't know the answer to that one either. I'm sorry. Tushar says, yep, 2 for under 44K each. This was 130 Turkish miles, so only needed 87,000 Citi thank you points with the bonus. Hey, there you go. Tushar says, Istanbul is a great jumping off point to anywhere in Europe with all their connections, so it works well for my Swiss/Austrian Alps trip next summer. Ooh, want to go there. I've been to Austria, but only Vienna. My country of origin is Vienna. Do I need to break out the picture, everyone? I think I do. Here's a picture of my ancestor from Austria, Gebhard Schee, over there in Feldkirch, Austria, on the far western part of Austria, close to the Alpish area. So yeah, I'd love to get over there sometime. Getting a little bit jealous. Yuri says, yes, you can fund US Bank with a credit card, but there is a limit. Thank you guys for helping each other out. We're all buds here. Back to the data points. This is your mileage may vary, but Verizon Home Internet is offering you the ability to switch to them and get a free Nintendo Switch, $250 Amazon gift card, and $200 Verizon gift card. I think after the word switch should be a semicolon. So you either get the free Nintendo Switch or $250 at Amazon plus a $200 Verizon gift card. It is your mileage may vary. When I read this on Doctor of Credit, hat tip to them, it seemed like very few people got the free Nintendo Switch offer, but at least one guy did and said you have to commit for at least 6 months, but even doing the math, you still come out like $100 to $200 ahead on that. I'm actually thinking of going with Verizon. I need a new internet provider for my cell phone. I need a new cell phone company. I talked to a friend of mine who's more technologically inclined than me, and I found out the reason why my data often seems slower than what I'm paying for is because I use Pure Talk USA, and that's one of those companies that uses the AT&T towers, but it's not AT&T. And what he explained to me is during like peak times, like business days when busy businessmen are using it, they will actually throttle down my speed so that their own customers can get more speed. And I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So someday I'd like to really, I have the ability to work from home, so I'd really like to lean into doing a working trip where like I don't have enough PTO to travel all the time, but I could go to, say, I'm just making something up, a cabin in northern Wisconsin for a week and keep working, but just work remotely. But I need, in case they don't have good internet at the cabin, I would need, cell phone reliability. Probably northern Wisconsin's a bad example. Let's say I go to Milwaukee. I don't know. Someplace where there's good cell phone reception, but I can't guarantee the hotel will have good internet. I've always found hotel internet to be too sus to reliably do job work from there. Let me know if you guys, do any of you work from home and you've worked from a hotel and found like a super reliable way of doing it? I have to do voice over IP phone calls in my job, so it has to be very reliable internet to work from a remote location. I'll go ahead and catch up on comments here. We talked about that. QC Man knows that my picture of Gebhard Schee, my ancestor, that is 100% a genuine picture. I mean, they had cameras like in the 1850s. Gebhard has the same mannerisms as me. I must be hereditary. Yuri's been to Feldkirch. I remember that discussion. Very close to Liechtenstein. Stacy thought I was a teacher. My wife's a teacher. So we're talking solo trips here. I could do it in April or March. She can't. February would be a great time. There's nothing going on in February. Rel says, I use a hotspot, Google Fi. Can you get Google Fi separate from your cell phone carrier? Like, can you buy a hotspot device just with Google Fi? Time for a screenshot. That way I'll remember to check it out later. Thanks, Rel. All right, do we have any more data points? We don't have any data points per se, but now we're going to move into a very important segment here. This is the Dugroz Eats segment. Now I have to stop sharing my screen to pull this up because my Dugroz Eats today is a video. I don't know if this has audio or not, but let's enjoy it. This is from a restaurant in Des Moines, Iowa called the Mad Meatball. Roll the tape. That's a chicken Alfredo from the Mad Meatball that was so hot and fresh, it was bubbling the cheesy goo. I love the cheesy goo. So to be a little more specific, now I need to go back to sharing my normal screen, stop screen, share screen, back to here, go to here. There it is. Yeah. So Mad Meatball, here is a picture of the item having been properly forked. And here's their mascot. This is actually kind of close to downtown. So if you're ever in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, I would recommend the Mad Meatball Pizzeria and Pub, at least for lunch. It's more pub-like than restaurant-like, so the crowd would get a little rowdier in the evenings. Let me know if you were able to hear the audio in that. Not that it really matters. It's just background noise. Fly and Ryan says, Homer hungry sounds. Oh. Rel says, you may buy a plan tied to a SIM. You can use the SIM in your phone or buy a separate mobile router. All right, thank you. Time for another screenshot. And then Yuri G says, Cartagena reminds me Tel Aviv with worse beaches. Interesting. All right, that's it. That's the end of the Dugroz data points. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. We've got 78 people on board, and we're going to transition now. This is live, folks. Maybe some of that chicken Alfredo is still working its way through the gastrointestinal tract. Excuse me. I usually make it to the mute button, but that time I did not. Holy cow. Sorry, folks. Although I got to say, I feel a lot better. Okay. Today's theme of the day is preferred hotels with Citi. And as you can see here, there's me eating at a fancy restaurant, although for some reason my left sleeve was either rolled up or ripped off, one of the two. And clearly this is a restaurant inside of a preferred hotel, the kind of place that Dr. Dug would love to eat. Pausing for just a moment here. I might need to restart this because of my little belch here. Happy Tom says, I'm here for the math and food. Great. MR says to Yuri, I'm not much of a beach guy, but I'll have to check it out regardless. QC Man says, I'm guessing the Mad Meatball is not a Resi or Sapphire Tables restaurant. Looks delicious, by the way. I haven't checked, but I kind of doubt it. It is locally owned, kind of small. QC Man's laughing at something. Ian knows that I'm still working on that Alfredo. And Yuri says, preferred hotels rival Hyatt. Fly and Ryan says, your left arm is holding up a fake arm off screen. That is what it looks like. My photoshopping skills are still leaving something to be desired. QC Man says, you need to go to a restaurant actually dressed like this. You mean just the fancy suit, or like my left sleeve is cut off at the elbow? Cesar is entertained. Rel says, I'm keeping it classy. If there's one thing we know about Dugroz reports, it's classy. Down and Mitch says, where's Golden Homer? He would have loved the Homer impression. Alfredo, I know it was you, says MR. And Yuri says, I also match titanium status at preferred. All right. Whew, I think we all got that out of our system. So let's back up a step here. 5, 4, 3. Today we're going to be talking about preferred hotels with Citi. So preferred hotels are moderately fancy hotels, and as you can see from this picture, me and my 6 fingers on my right hand love fancy hotel restaurants. So what are preferred hotels? Well, if you're wondering, here is how their website describes it. Preferred hotels and resorts connect discerning travelers like myself to luxurious hotels, resorts, and residences in iconic destinations around the world. So to put it a little more plainly, I guess, preferred hotels is sort of like a loose confederation of hotels. It's not one particular franchise. An equivalency would be SLH, small luxury hotels, as with Hilton. It's kind of a loose confederation of hotels, or Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Hyatt. So this is just a confederation of hotels, but Citi has kind of a backdoor way of accessing them. Now, I'll give a little hat tip here to Frequent Miler, who first turned me on to them. But up until about a year and a half ago, you could book them, but you always had to call in, and it was just a nightmare. Fortunately, that has changed. You can now do it online, mostly, although, as Yuri pointed out, some people have said there can be hiccups. They're not quite perfected yet. Many preferred hotels, but not all, can be booked with points. Of those, some can be booked with Preferred Hotels' own iPrefer points. That's the name of their loyalty program, iPrefer. Some can be booked with Choice Privileges points, and some can be booked with both. If you have a Citi Strata Premier card, and the same would apply to the new Strata Elite, this was written before that came out, also the grandfathered Prestige card, or the no longer available AT&T Access More cards, you can transfer your Citi Thank You points 1 to 2 to Choice and 1 to 4 to iPrefer. I think the ability to go 1 to 4 to iPrefer came out about a year ago, roughly. Furthermore, if you have Wells Fargo Autograph or Autograph Journey, and I don't know why they left this out, but also the grandfathered Golden Ponies card, you can transfer Wells Fargo 1 to 2 to Choice. So you've got a couple different ways of booking them. 1 to 2 to Choice, going from Wells Fargo or Citi, or 1 to 4 from Citi to iPrefer. As we found out early in the conversation, technically you can now do 1 to 2 to iPrefer with Capital One, but I'm not going to include that from here on out because it's just not that great of a ratio. Yuri says, for example, there was a hotel in Cartagena which was bookable with Choice points, but not iPrefer points. It is weird because I ran across the same thing. I've never ran across one that's bookable with iPrefer, but not Choice. I've ran across several iPrefer hotels that are not bookable with either. I think Frequent Miler says you've got about 198, so just under 200 that are bookable with iPrefer points. Yuri says booking with Choice is more expensive with iPrefer. Well, hey, we're going to find out if that's true or not today. Thank you, Yuri. That is a good assertion. Moving along. So here are 6 real examples of four-night Choice or iPrefer stays. Why did I pick 4 nights? Well, last week I talked about the edit stays, and we figured out the best way to optimize that is with 4 nights. So I thought, let's just kind of stick with that theme. So there's a couple examples of properties that are part of preferred hotels. All of those look super nice, don't they? As it relates to iPrefer reward nights, we're going to say these are all 4-night stays. This is going to be June 5th through 9th, unless indicated otherwise. That time I did get to the mute button. If you're wondering how I picked June 5th through 9th, it's because my wife and I are celebrating our anniversary this coming May. Since she's a teacher, we won't be able to actually do anything until we get beyond the end of the school year. But we're thinking like somewhere around June. This isn't the exact date we're going to travel, but it's kind of in that range. So let's just say June 5th through 9th to keep it easy, and say we go on a couples trip, just the 2 of us. We're not going to bring the boys with us. And then also, this is a Friday through a Tuesday. We've got 77 people on board, which is okay, but I'd prefer to get up over 85. So keep clicking thumbs up. If you want to make a donation, that would help. We haven't had one since Double Animal Fries dropped $2, and that was 20 minutes ago. So let's keep that algorithm churning here. Ian is also a 5/18 anniversary. So yeah, if you have an anniversary in May, traveling in June would make a lot of sense. Catching my breath here. Oh, hey, I got a tip jar tip from MR, who says, keep trucking with the great content, sir. Thanks, MR. Celebrate. It says I lost a connection to screen share audio. I hope that just means the audio that's embedded. If for some reason you can't hear me, please speak up. Rel says to Luke Johnson, Greg, the frequent miler, randomly taking a sunset picture at Alila Ventana Big Sur. Pretty memorable. He was the exact reason I looked into that property. Is that property available as a preferred hotel? I don't think it is. Or maybe it will be in the future. I know it used to be with either Marriott, Hilton, or Hyatt. One of those. Can't remember which one. QC man can still hear me. That's good. Okay. So moving along here. The first example is, speaking of frequent miler, Cavallo Point in Sausalito, California. This is just on the north side of the Bay Area. In fact, you can see the northern tip of the Golden Gate Bridge right there. Go down around the corner, and there you are, Cavallo Point. So I saw this on Frequent Miler, and it inspired me to look into it. If you use choice points to book preferred, it's 71,000 points per night. For some reason, with both choice booking iPrefer and iPrefer directly, it seems like the price is always the same. It's not dynamic. They just pick a price and go with it on points. So whether it's $1,000 a night or $500 a night, it's just 71,000. You can pick between the historic queen or the historic king, either one. And the direct price would be $2,648. So you could book this with 284,000 choice points. That comes out to 0.9 cents per point. But remember, you can transfer from Citi to choice 1 to 2. So we got to double that on the cents per point. So you're actually getting 1.8 cents per point. And you would need 142,000 Citi points to actually accomplish this through choice. The same property is available through iPrefer directly. And don't ever look up here. This is the cash plus points booking. Well, look at the one that's just points. 100,000 points per night directly through iPrefer. 4 nights would be, of course, 400,000 iPrefer points, which comes out to 0.7 cents per point. You might think to yourself, Dugroz, that doesn't sound very good. But remember, we're transferring 1 to 4. So you got to take that times 4 to get the cents per point, divide by 4 to see how many points you need. So you would need 100,000 Citi points to pull this off, which comes out to 2.6 cents per point. So for Cavallo Point, our first example, iPrefer wins. 2.6 cents per point would be better than 1.8 cents per point. And I would rather use 100,000 Citi points than 142,000. So like Yuri said, iPrefer is better. Well, that's one example out of 6. Let's keep looking here. There's got to be more examples than that. Rel clarified that the Alila Ventana Big Sur is a Hyatt affiliated property. And Luke Johnson thinks that's excellent. And Tariq Burks is here, says, by the way, it is part of the Chase Edit hotels. Which one? This one, Cavallo Point, or the Alila Ventana Big Sur? Or maybe both. Moving along with all of this, next candidate is the Salamander Resort in Middleburg, Virginia. And you might think to yourself, that sounds familiar. Yeah, I've referenced it about 1,000 times. In 2024, so not the summer that just ended, but the one before that, my family stayed here for 3 nights. This is in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, or if you think you're in Washington, D.C., you cross the river into Arlington, Virginia, go about an hour west of there towards the Blue Ridge Mountains. You can kind of see they're in the background. You got a little ways to go. It's not in the mountains, but you can see the mountains off in the distance. This is the only 5-star resort as classified by like Condé Nast Traveler kind of thing, an outside agency that I've ever stayed in. I stayed at one other place that called themselves a 5-star resort, but nobody acknowledged it. I can't remember which one that was. Might have been the Kimpton in Charlottesville, Virginia. Anyway, yes, this is the only 5-star resort I've ever stayed at in my whole life. It was very pinky in the air, very swanky, but not too swanky. If you book this with choice privilege points, like I did, at the time I made my booking, iPrefer wasn't an option. It would be 74,000 points per night for an estate double queen or king room. If I remember correctly, estate just means it's on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th floor, so you have a balcony. They also have terrace rooms, which are exactly the same, but they're on the 1st floor and you walk out onto a terrace. The cash price would be $3,912 for 4 nights. That is expensive. Or you could use 296,000 choice points to take that times 4. That's 1.3 cents per point. That's okay. And then you do the 1-to-2 ratioizing, and now you've got 2.6 cents per point on the Citi side. It cost you 148,000 Citi points. When I did it, it was a little cheaper. I think it was 55,000 choice points per night, and then they had a little bit of a devaluation. It went up. So mine was over 3 cents per point when I did it. But if you book it for this coming June, 2.6 cents per point. Now, what about iPrefer booking directly? There are no points bookings offered. So like Yuri pointed out earlier, for some reason, I don't know why, some of the properties that are available on Choice are not available through iPrefer directly, and vice versa. But in this case, not available through iPrefer. By the way, I promise I did not cherry pick these based on the numbers, the math. I did cherry pick in the sense of just these are places that I would like or kind of look appealing to me. There are lots of iPrefer hotels that are like in the middle of a big city, like downtown Chicago, downtown New York, that are just sort of like any other swanky hotel. I prefer something a little more unique, either out in the country, or it looks like a castle, or it's in an old fortress, or on an island, or something weird. So I'm trying to go with something a little more unique, like on an equestrian ranch in Virginia, or the foothills of the Golden Gate Bridge, the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge. This place literally does have horse stables. I mean, who doesn't take their horse on vacation with them? Am I right? So if we look at Salamander Middleburg, Choice wins because 2.6 cents per point is better than not available. Hey, winning by default is still winning. Am I right? Let's see. Tariq clarified he's not talking about the Alila, so we must be talking about the Cavatello point being available on the edit. Stacy says, I found a castle in Scotland or Ireland once with iPrefer. It looked amazing. I'll be listening from the sauna, so I thought I'd throw that out before I jumped in. Keep on listening, Stacy. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Luke Johnson says, Dugroz, how about you? What's the most memorable experience you've ever had at a hotel, either really good or really bad? I'm assuming your question is something pertaining to the hotel itself. Because like if I said I stayed at the Hotel Odin in Göteborg, Sweden, it was a perfectly nice hotel, and I really liked that 3 days in Sweden, but it wasn't because of the hotel. It was just because I was there in Sweden. So I don't think that really counts. So if I'm thinking the hotel itself, I'm going to think that over. I don't really have dual processors in my brain, but maybe I can partition the RAM off and assign 1 meg to that. Ask me a little later in the live stream after we're through the main event, and I'll see what I can come up with. Rel says, Salamander was lovely. I took the nieces there for Little Santa's workshop hayride they had a few years ago. Awesome. Did you book through Choice Points or iPrefer? Either one. Yuri says, by the way, iPrefer charges you taxes on top of points in countries which charges taxes from tourists, unlike Israel and Colombia, which don't charge. That's good to know. I actually remember when booking iPrefer hotels through Choice, well, the one time I did it here at the Salamander, there was some confusion because like on the checkout screen, it said something that there may be local taxes, but there weren't. From what I have read, there are some countries that charge you a tax that just cannot be avoided. Like even if let's say you're booking with Hyatt points, which doesn't pass along taxes or fees. One I read about was Croatia. I don't know if that's right or not, but in Croatia, there's this like 1% tax that you just cannot avoid, and they'll still charge you that even if you're paying points. So it would make sense that the same thing happens on iPrefer. MR says that property isn't horsing around, is it? Touche. I love dad jokes. And Rel says, Dugroz reports time for a brain defrag. Ding, ding, ding. Yep, fire up your 24-bit modem. All right, I know that and defragging are two different things, but it made me think of 90s style modems for some reason. Moving along here, next example is the Hotel Angleterre in Lausanne, Switzerland. By the way, I probably pronounce a lot of these badly, but I'll say the Hotel Angleterre. Look at that. That just looks gorgeous. You got a Swimming pool, I'm just assuming there's some guy yodeling, playing one of those long Ricola horns, just off to the left, probably. So if we're going to stay June 5th through 9th, as is tradition, we'll get the Superior Room, which is one queen bed. I couldn't tell if it's a literal queen or if this is like one of those foreign country queens that's actually the size of a king. I guess if we had to deal with it, we could deal with it. We sleep in a queen bed right now. I love getting king-size beds on vacation, though. It would be 46,000 points per night through choice, and the direct price was $1,201. You would need to quadruple that for 4 nights. We're talking 184,000 choice points, and that gets you 0.7 cents per point on the choice side. But of course, we double that since we got a 1-to-2 transfer ratio. On the Citi side, you're only using, or you are earning 1.3 cents per point. Not as impressive, but at least it's over 1. 92,000 Citi points. Like I said, this was not cherry-picked based on the math. It was only cherry-picked based on this looks cool. Who wouldn't want to stay at a lodge in the Swiss Alps? If instead you go to iPrefer, as noted here in the corner, now you're paying 50,000 points per night, and you might be thinking to yourself, oh, that's more. That's not good. But remember, you have different ratios. The ratios! That's an inside joke with my son. He's really into like nutrition, the non-chess and football one who does Ninja Gym. He's really into nutrition. So sometimes he'll be annoying. Oop, I hit a button. Sorry if that did something. Sometimes he'll be annoying the rest of the family by like standing in the kitchen, blocking the sink, and he's got one of those little scales used to measure your food. And we're like, come on, Ben, just scoop out your lasagna. And he's like, but Dad, I got to get the ratios right. So then my other son and I will say, the ratios. This has been a Dugroz inside joke that barely makes sense. The ratios tell us that if you're booking through iPrefer, you need 200,000 iPrefer points, and that's 0.6 cents per point. But remember, 1-to-4 transfer, so it's actually 2.4 cents per point on the Citi side. Now we're talking, and you only need 50,000 Citi points. Wow, that's not bad, because remember, 50,000 times 4 divided by 4, that's 50,000. I sure hope someday iPrefer has a transfer bonus from Citi. Then it'd be even better. So for the Hotel Angleterre in Lausanne, Switzerland, iPrefer wins in this case, as 2.4 cents per point is better than 1.3. I would rather spend 50,000 Citi points than 92,000. Actually wins by quite a lot in this particular example. We've dropped down to 70,000 people, so go ahead and keep on clicking thumbs up. We've dropped down to 70 people. Keep on clicking thumbs up. I would love 70,000. MR says, we shall call him Horatio. The boy who loves ratios. Yes, let's. Next up is the Castle Martyr Resort in Cork, Ireland. Hey, wasn't there a comment just a little bit ago from Stacy who says, I found a castle in Scotland or Ireland once with iPrefer? Well, looky here. Matt Foley voice. Well, what have we here? There's a castle right there, and they basically built their resort so it goes right up into the edge of the castle. This is in Ireland. Well, what do you know? Let me skip ahead to the next screen. If you book this with choice points, it would be 25,000 points per night. The direct price would be $1,667. Yes, I did account for exchange rates. Actually, iPrefer makes it really easy. They put the price both in local currency and US dollars right on the screen, inclusive of all taxes and fees. So thank you for that, iPrefer. You need to take 25,000 times 4 to get 4 nights. That's 100,000 choice points, 1.7 cents per point. That's pretty good, but remember 1-to-2, and that's 3.3 cents per point on the choice hotels version. 3.3 Citi points if you send it over to choice, and you only need 50,000 Citi points. You might be thinking, there's no way iPrefer can beat that. Well, all we got to do is look at the math. If instead you book the Castle Martyr Resort through iPrefer, it's 50,000 points per night. What was on the last screen? 25,000. If we think about ratios, it's exactly the same. So instead of taking 50,000 times 4 divided by, I'm confusing myself. Instead of taking 25,000 times 4 divided by 2, which comes out to 50,000, On iPrefer, we're going to take 50,000 times 4, which is 200,000 divided by 4, and get 50,000. So it also comes out to 3.3 cents per point. So no matter how you slice it with the Castle Martyr Resort, it's a tie. 3.3 cents per point via Choice Hotels. 3.3 cents per point if you send your valuable Citi points over to iPrefer. And either way, 50,000. That's really good. 3.3 cents per point. And I would love to stay 4 nights in a castle. Okay, it's a building built right next to a castle over in Ireland. That would be pretty cool. Quick catch up on comments here. Let's see. 70,000 live viewers. Pretty impressive, says Rel. Michael Wong is here. How you doing, Michael? From Wong Way Travels, one of the best punny names ever. Remind me again, with Prefer, are you able to see the full hotel points for a property even if you don't have points in your account? Yes, I am. I don't have any points in my account, and it's showing me the full amount. It'll say something like, you don't have enough points, but at least you can still see it. JC says, good morning. How you doing, Panda Bear? Loving these hotel comparison lives. Great. And Rel digs math lives too. Yeah, I did 3 in a row that were either directly or indirectly related to hotels. I did the Hilton devaluation. Then I did using the Edit hotels. And now I'm doing iPrefer type hotels or preferred hotels, whether you use iPrefer or Choice, either way. Next example is the Casa de Langa in Cerreto Lahagne, Italy. Got to blow my nose and take a drink. This is too hard to pronounce. I'm just going to call it the Casa de Lasagna from now on. I mean, it is Italy. Look at that beautiful bottom right-hand corner picture. That is just, hey, what's the matter? Why not do you go there? I talk with my hands. Garfield, lasagna. This is in the northern part of Italy, not the sticky outy peninsula, but the inland part of Italy, not too far from the border with France, maybe 20 to 30 miles from there. So you could fly into like Nice, France, and then you'd probably have to figure out a way to get over there because it doesn't look like there's an airport right next door. But anyhow, if you use the classic room with Choice, 55,000 points per night, and you'll notice it says not enough points, so it is letting me look. Wong. Michael, I don't know why I called you Wong. That's your last name. Pardon me. It would be 20,071 US dollars or 220,000 Choice points for 4 nights, which is 0.9 cents per point. Double that, you get 1.9 cents per point if you're using Citi points. I know you might be thinking like 0.9 times 2 is 1.8, Doug. There's rounding involved. It was probably something like 0.85, but I only like to go 1 decimal point out. So trust me, the math is the math. If instead you book through iPrefer directly, you'll see it's 100,000 points per night, but we have the ratios. So that comes out to half a cent per point. On the iPrefer side, divide that by 4. You only need 100,000 Citi points, which comes out to exactly 2 cents per point. So if we're booking the Casa de Lasagna, iPrefer wins just by a touch. 2 cents per point is better than 1.9 cents per point. 110,000 Citi points versus 110,000 Citi points. So a very minimal difference. I wouldn't fret about it, but enough to mention. Source King has arrived. How you doing, Source King? Good to see you. The 1 to 4 transfer rate from Citi is looking pretty good. Yuri says, to Source King, it's a deal breaker, meaning I assume what you mean is if it wasn't 1 to 4, it wouldn't be worth it. So I agree with you in that sense. Rel says, Castle Martyr is just east of Kabha. Kabha has a lovely Titanic memorial garden and museum. It was the last port the Titanic stopped at to pick up passengers. Interesting. Thanks for letting us know. I'm sure it's not pronounced Kabha, but I'm a big fan of silent letters. Michael Wong says, lately Citi has been my favorite credit card issues for transferring for Choice, AA, and Turkish. Great issuer for Asian and Europe travel. It certainly seems that way. I think I was getting my Irish accent there. It certainly seems that way. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. And Luke Johnson says, Dugroz, I like your accents. You make me laugh. Glad I can sprinkle in a little bit of levity there. Keep on clicking the thumbs up button. We're at 73, which isn't bad. We're not really growing. Maybe somebody else dropping a 149 super chat would help a little bit with that. All right, let's keep on going with the content here. Don't want to dilly, nor do I want to dally. Rel says the town is not pronounced Cobha, it's pronounced Cove. Thank you. And Yuri says there's a Titanic museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. That seems random. There's probably a reason. Tennessee seems like the last place I would expect a Titanic museum. Maybe Des Moines, Iowa would be the second to last place. Tushar says I've had a couple of insane iPrefer bookings. Very valuable city transfer partner in certain situations. I agree with that. And Yuri says regarding the last place I would expect, exactly, but it's there. Same. Okay. Next example, the Grand York in York, United Kingdom. And I see this, I think to myself, hey, I've been there. Not to this hotel, but if you look in the background, that's the York Minster. Minster is apparently a word for big fancy cathedral. I've been to that exact cathedral. So I've been in this town. I've probably walked within in fact, I know with certainty, I walked across this bridge right here with this tower thing. So I've been within 200 yards of that hotel in my life. Now, this one I had to make a little exception to my June 5th through 9th rule because for some reason, when booking with Choice Hotels, they will not let you book on a Friday or Saturday anywhere. I looked at all the months. So you have to only book Sunday through Thursdays for some reason. Maybe if you start on a Monday, they would let you check out on a Friday, but they will not let you check in on a Friday or a Saturday. So instead, I'm going to pick the 4 days of Sunday the 7th through Thursday the 11th in this case. So for those dates with Choice, you would need 35,000 points per night. Take that times 4. You've got 140,000 Choice points for your trip. That's 0.7 cents per point. You double that, you get 1.5 cents per point. On the city side, you need 70,000 city points. Not terrible, but not as good as some of them. The iPrefer direct calendar was a little different. I was able to use the same dates, the 7th through 11th, but you'll see here, this one, it's more like random. Like you can't check in on these Fridays and Saturdays, but you can check in on this Saturday. I could have done the 5th through 9th, but you can't use this Saturday. It's like, I don't know why. With Citi, they just said, I can't figure this out. Let's block out all the Fridays and Saturdays. With Prefer, they're like, let's block out the ones where we only want cash customers. Whatevs, man. Whatevs. So if you do book through iPrefer, it's going to be 50,000 points per night. So quadruple that for your stay. You need 200,000 iPrefer points. That's half a cent per point, but we're going to quadruple that because of the 1-to-4 transfer ratio, 2 cents per point. And again, only 50,000 points. Not too bad. Although the cash rate's not that high. That comes out to, 1 cent per point? That comes out... Why did I just stop and do the math? I have it written down right here. That comes out to 2 cents per point. So this was just a cool aerial photo. It says, make each moment magical. I think the hotel is right there in the foreground. It's kind of dark. There's the Minster in the background. But that's a cool drone shot or helicopter shot or Superman shot. iPrefer wins with the Grand York because 2 cents per point is better than 1.5 cents per point. I would rather spend 50,000 points of my very valuable city points than 70,000. I will tell you, this is making me want to stick with my strategy from the path method of earning lots of city points on everyday spend. Where were we? Let's see. Happy Tom is saying, and just like that, Dugroz gets banned in Italy. If there are actually Italian government officials watching this live stream, please put a comment down below. Source King says to Yuri, I'm looking at some places in Tokyo and 50,000 city points could go a long ways. Awesome. Yuri says Pigeon Forge is a little like Las Vegas, but without casinos. You can drive 1 hour to Cherokee, North Carolina, where there is a casino. It sounds a little bit like Branson, Missouri, at least a little. Juan Garcia's here and says, good morning, Doug. Late but here. Good to see you, Juan from Miami. And MR says, isn't that where Dolly Parton's theme park is? A bunch of Civil War stuff, question mark. Civil War stuff, yes. There were some Civil War battles in rural Tennessee. And there is a... I know in Branson they have a place called Dolly Parton's Stampede. It used to be called Dixie Stampede, but for PC reasons, they changed it to Dolly Parton Stampede. But I think there's also a theme park called Dollywood. At least that sounds familiar with me. Well, now Islands in the Stream is stuck in my head. Crap. Islands in the stream. That is what we are. No one in between. How can we go wrong? Better stop there. Gold Homer says, crap, I'm late for Dugroz. I thought it was a fake Saturday. Oh, nope, this is an authentic Saturday. Yuri says, yes, Dolly Parton is everywhere. Mike says, maybe the hotels are like wedding venues and big event venues. That's why Saturdays and Sundays will be blocked out. That is definitely possible. When I was in Austria and we toured the Schönbrunn Palace, our tour guide says you can rent the palace for weddings in like 3 or 4 hour blocks. And it was like starting at 40,000 euros on the least desirable days. So that's what, at least 50,000 bucks. Like, holy cow. My entire wedding was about $2,000. MR says, when I'm not working 9 to 5, I'll have to check it out sometime. I see what you did there. Working 9 to 5. Yuri says, I haven't seen any Civil War stuff in Pigeon Forge. Maybe I'm thinking of Chattanooga. Yuri says, Dollywood is the largest theme park there, and Flying Ryland is excited about Dollywood. Dugroz is a natural Kenny Rogers, says Rel. I was singing that in the shower the other day, and I thought to myself, the Kenny Rogers part is kind of right in my vocal range. There's a famous creationist museum in Branson. I've been to the Kentucky one. I didn't know there was one in Branson. Okay, I'm going to push ahead here. Keep on clicking thumbs up. We've only got 74 people on board. All right, well, I've got a blank screen. Does that mean we're done? Here it does. Here's the summary so far. So I've had my 6 examples. San Francisco, the one at the end of the Golden Gate Bridge, was 100,000 points and was 2.6 cents per point. The Salamander Resort in Virginia was 148,000 points for 2.6 cents per point. And actually, I forgot to mention this. We found out that transferring 1 to 4 to iPrefer was either better or a tie in every situation than choice 1 to 2. Except the Salamander, where it wasn't an option. So the Salamander is the only one where I'm using choice or city to choice. Everything else I'm using city to iPrefer direct. Keep on going. Let me start that over. I interrupted myself too much. Here's the summary of the 6 examples. San Francisco, at the foothills of the Golden Gate Bridge, 100,000 points, 2.6 cents per point. The Salamander Resort in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, Virginia, 148,000 points, 2.6 cents per point. Switzerland, 50,000 points, 2.4 Swiss per point, cents per point. Over in the Swiss Alps. Castle Martyr in Ireland was 50,000 points, 3.3 cents per point. The Casa Lasagna in Italy was 100,000 points, exactly 2 cents per point. And then last but not least, the Grand York Hotel in York, England was 50,000 points, 2 cents per point. Where's Sam K from the UK? I could use him right about now. So are we all wondering how that comes out in terms of averages and whatnot? I'm sure we are. The average 4-night stay was 83,000 points, which means it's 2.5 cents per point on the average. Just to clarify, not 83,000 points per night. Did I say that? 83,000 points altogether for a 4-night stay. That's how many city points you would need, 83,000. So then I think of it like this. Obviously, if you're doing sign-up bonuses or shenanigans, that's one thing. But if you're trying to use natural spend, how hard is it to earn 83,000 city points? How long does it take to earn 83,000 city points? Well, let's say you've got a city double cash, 2 cents per point. You've got a city prestige. City prestige, we get 3 cents per point on gas, dining, groceries, transit, and travel. Let's say you average those out half and half. That's 2.5 points per dollar. You would need to earn $33,200 to have enough for your 4-night stay at your average iPrefer hotel. If you can average 3 cents per point through those gas, groceries, dining, etc. categories, then you only need to spend $27,667. Now, one thing I think to myself is I set a rough budget of running $57,000 per year of spend through credit cards. Natural spend. At 33,000, that's over half, and at 27,000, that's half-ish. I don't want half of my natural spend to go towards one 4-night stay at an iPrefer hotel. That just reminds us all that Sign-up bonuses is where it's at if you want to earn a lot of points quickly, but it's still worth considering how long it would take to earn natural spend. Where were we? MR says, related to the Creationist Museum, I had no idea. John R is adulting and says, I'll watch the replay tonight. No problem. Thanks, John. With a $2 super chat. Celebrate. Haven't seen anyone who's used the Alaska Airlines card to start doing their super chats in a foreign currency yet. MR. QCM is very pleased at MR's joke. Tom Graybird gifts 1 Dugroz for Parts membership. Celebrate. Hey, that's just as good as a $3 donation. QC Man says, if you have an army of custom caches, a lot of points. Yep, you could do that. You could use some shenanigans or just keep track of your spending really carefully. DEM says, I have every thank you point earning card, including the Prestige and Elite, when combined their points earning machines. Yeah, absolutely. Still not as many as sign-up bonuses, but I know exactly what you mean. All right, let's continue on. I've got just a little bit more info here. Now, this is an important subject to talk about. Let's revisit the Grand York, since that's a city that I've been in. It seems like we should pause for a moment and say, is this a good use of points overall? Because cents per point is great, but let's just say I found something that was 10 cents per point, which is amazing, but I have to use 10 million points to book it. Yeah, it's great cents per point. Actually, what does that come out to? Let's see. I need X divided by 10 million equals 0.1. So I would need to take 0.1 and divide by 10 million. I did that wrong. I think it would be $1 million trip. Whatever. What I'm saying is cents per point is good and all until you're using a whole bunch for something you can't really afford. So let's just revisit this topic here. The top is pictures from their website. The bottom 2 pictures I took myself. I like just the old towniness. You're just walking down the streets in New York and like every third building is a historical building. This is some sort of historical clock. I'm not sure what the significance is. But anyhow, the direct price to book the Grand York Hotel is just a little over $1,000. It's $1,017. Now, you would need 200,000 iPrefer points for your 4-night stay. And if you work that backwards, 4 to 1, you would need 50,000 Citi points. So again, we already know you take the direct price, divide by 50,000. That's 2 cents per point, which is pretty good. But is this a value trap? There's a frequent viewer named New Again who mentioned the word value trap several times in some recent videos. Like with the videos about the edit, he's saying like it's kind of a value trap because even if it is worth it and you're using your credits, you got this $900 annual fee, would you really spend your money on this? When I was in New York, I stayed at the Hampton Inn. So the question is, what's wrong with the Hampton Inn? So here it is, the Hampton by Hilton, York Piccadilly, in York, England. Here's me staying by the statue of Constantine. Constantine the Great was crowned king in the town of York. He was on a military campaign there when his dad died in the year like 57 AD or something like that. So we can see that the Hampton Inn, if you book it for this coming June, is 215,000 points total for all 4 nights, Hilton points, or it would cost you 570 British pound sterling. If you were to buy Hilton points at half a cent each to cover this, you would need a little over $1,000, $1,075. Frankly, folks, that's a bad price. So I wouldn't do this. I did the math. It came out to less than 0.4 cents per point on the Hilton side. It was like 0.3637. It was bad. So you don't want to buy in at a half cents per point to get 0.37 cents per point. If instead you just straight up paid cash, your 570 British pound sterling converts to 762 US dollars. If you're like, but I don't have $762, you could cash out penny points, especially if you're like me and want to safeguard your family budget. You can cash out Citi points for a penny each. You need to have like a double cash or a custom cash, something like that to do it, but you can do it. You'd have to cash out 76,200 points. And then your third option will be to transfer from Amex. Now, normally they transfer 1 to 2. You would need 107,500 Amex points, which is 0.7 cents per point. That's pretty bad, getting less than 1 Amex point per dollar. If they had a 30% transfer bonus, which they have had in recent past, that would be 1 to 2.6. You'd need 82,692 Amex points. Less bad. That's 0.9 cents per point. Still kind of bad. So if you're going to do one of these options, use that middle option, $762 or 76,200 points. I am going somewhere with this. And I just noticed Rel said, yeesh, 215 points for 4 nights in a Hampton Inn. Yeah, that's true. So with that in mind, we need to ask ourselves, would you rather, if you're going to York anyway, would you rather stay in the Grand York Hotel, which looks like this, very fancy and historic on the outside, pretty swank on the inside, or would you rather stay at the Hampton Inn, just, a modern building, probably built in the 90s? It's very fine. It's perfectly cromulent. I liked it. Has air conditioning, had a normal bed with a bench. It wasn't very big, but it was fine. Which would you rather have? Here's something to remember. The Hampton Inn has free breakfast. The Grand York probably doesn't. And the reason why I say probably doesn't is because when I stayed at the Salamander Resort, I got lucky and had that match your aeroplan to iPrefer status thing. So I actually got free breakfast for me and my family of 4 at the Salamander. That saved us a lot of money because their breakfast was expensive. They actually didn't want to give me free breakfast because they said, well, since you booked with Choice Points, that's a separate rewards program, so you can't use your iPrefer benefits, which kind of makes sense. Except on the first day, I called down to the front desk and specifically asked, what benefits will I get since I am a iPrefer Titanium member? And the front desk lady specifically said, you'll get a voucher for free breakfast for each family member each day of your 3-day stay. So I told the manager at checkout, actually, when I was checking out, we were in a big hurry and I didn't have time to argue. So I emailed the manager and I said, since your employee told me I'd be getting free breakfast, that changed my behavior. I would not have eaten that many meals at like $33 a person if I had known. She said, okay, that's a fair point. We'll comp your breakfast. So you might get free breakfast with iPrefer, but you probably won't unless you have that titanium status. The Grand York does have a restaurant inside, and this is an actual screenshot from the restaurant inside the Grand York of one of the things that you can order. Now, have any of you watched Dude Perfect, or you have kids that like watching Dude Perfect? They had a video about a decade ago called Restaurant Stereotypes. One of them was big price, small portion. It's hard to see because it's kind of grayed out. But the two guys in the background, Garrett and Cody, are looking at their meals like, and they just said, I've heard this place is expensive, but definitely worth it. And they set down a plate that looks a lot like the one from the screenshot. This is an actual screenshot from the restaurant inside the Grand York. Now, I reached out to my resident restaurateur, Ian. Wave if you're still on board, Ian. And he explained to me that this screenshot is almost certainly from their tastings menu. Now, being I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, I didn't know what a tastings menu was. So I Googled it, and with Ian's help, I put the pieces of the puzzle together. Instead of ordering an entree, sometimes you go to fancy pants restaurants, which I don't go to enough, so I didn't know this. I've been to like 2 in my whole life. If you go to a fancy pants restaurant, like a really fancy pants restaurant where you're paying like $75 a plate or more, instead of ordering an entree, you can order from what's called the tastings menu, where the chef will pick samples of different items that they specialize in for you. And you get anywhere from 5 to 20 of these throughout the meal. So this picture looks like a tiny meal, but realistically, this might be 1 of 5 or 1 of 10 or 1 of 20 things. Like you get to try a little tiny mushroom, you get to try a little tiny steak, a little tiny red thing, a little tiny thingamajig with slots in it that looks like it's going to float away. So not really up my alley, but it's not as much of a ripoff as what I thought when I first saw it. Mr. Roz would be like, excuse me? Let's press on. So let's sleuth out the restaurant a little bit more. So with some Grand York breakfast sleuthing, I went to Google reviews. Someone had taken a screenshot of the Rise Terrace and Bar. That's the restaurant inside it. And it's kind of hard to see, but right here it says 25 pounds per adult for breakfast selection. I'm pretty sure breakfast selection means you can order anything off the menu. Maybe it's a buffet. I'm not really sure. But 25 pounds per adult would be $33. $33 times 2 adults would be $66 per day. 4 days would be $264. So if you're debating the Hampton Inn versus the Grand York, you should probably at least take into consideration you're going to be spending $264 on breakfast. Now, that may or may not be fair because you might think to yourself, well, I'm perfectly happy to skip breakfast. I pay for it at the Hampton Inn whether I want it or not. You might think to yourself, well, I'm perfectly happy to walk down the street to Wendy's. Yes, I know for sure there was a Wendy's down the street because I ate there. And get their breakfast, and that's fine. But I feel like for the sake of apples to apples, we should at least take it into consideration. I have to say, with this item right here, the Frank and beans with the potato rounds and the ham, that looks a lot like what was at the Hampton Inn. It doesn't look that much different or that much fancier. Now, this thingamajig, whatever it is, bread pudding floating over avocados and berries, I don't know, looks fancy. And this bread selection looks a little fancier than the Hampton Inn, but not a lot fancier. So it's just a question of would you rather. I'm sure as a kid you all played those would you rather games. Would you rather drink an entire glass of Hulk Hogan's sweat or have your head painted like a soccer ball buried up to your neck in the beach sand and have a bunch of drunk guys come along? Would you rather stay at the Grand York Hotel where you make each moment magical or at the Hampton Inn where it's a Hampton Inn? Consider that the Grand York's cash price is about a third more expensive, a little over $1,000 versus $760. Consider that it's only 60,000 city points versus 76,000 if you cash out and you're like, oh man, a fancy hotel that's fewer points, sign me up for that. But please consider at the Grand York Hotel, you're going to be paying up to $264 for breakfast, whereas at the Hampton Inn, it's free. I'll give you a few seconds to think it over while I take a drink. Go ahead and put your would you rather in the chat, or if you are watching after the fact, down in the comment section. I just love to hear honest first opinion without knowing more details. Who would rather stay at the Grand York Hotel? Who would rather stay at the Hampton Inn? Here's my interesting observation that might help your decision. If you just look at the part that I put in the red box here, you've got 50,000 city points versus 76,000 city points, Grand York versus Hampton Inn. What if you had to cash out city points to get to that same amount of breakfast? How much would you need to cash out to get $264? We got to move the decimal 2 places. So that's 2,600, 26,000, 26,400 extra city points. What happens if you had 26,400 city points to 50,000? You come up with 76,400. Notice how if you think about it that way, the prices are almost exactly the same. They're only 200 points different if you think about it as inclusive of breakfast. So as I see it, the would you rather really just comes down to your style. Are you more of a Dr. Doog and you like the luxury? You like the fancy pantsness. You like having a doorman hold the door for you. But it's also a little bit presumptuous, a little bit self-righteous. I can tell you Mr. Roz would not feel comfortable at the Grand York. Mr. Roz would way rather go to the Hampton Inn. I can tell you, Mr. Roz, having been there, it's a bunch of normal British people. They were just sitting at the bar talking about their favorite soccer teams and, you know, very working class British accents. It was great. I kind of felt right at home. And is it fancy? No. Was it fine? Yeah, it was fine. By the way, I did a cash stay when I stayed and paid myself back with Aeroplan. Boom. So which team are you on? Only you can decide. Do you think doing choice hotels is worth it? I know the York one was just one example, but like, would you rather just invest in Chase and get a bunch of Hyatt houses and Hyatt places for 5,000 to 8,000 points per night? Which would be cheaper. Let's say even if it was 8, that's 8 times 4 is 32, right? 32,000 points versus 50,000 points. Somebody said in one of my comment sections, I just can't help but thinking that's a whole lot of Hyatt stays. Or would you rather just stay at a Wyndham Garden Inn or a Hilton Garden Inn or a Fairfield Inn? Or, that's up to you. Would you rather have a little more quantity, a little more quality? Kind of depends on a variety of factors. I think, like, for me, once a year, I would stay at the Grand York equivalent, but the rest of the time, I'm going to stay at the Holiday Inn Expresses and that kind of stuff, the Hampton Inns of the world, and just be totally fine with that. All right. I probably got a million comments to catch up on, as that is the end of it. That's the end of the main event. I'm having another Mitch McConnell moment here. Okay, here we are. Yuri says, 2QC, man, one Sears card beats my 10 custom caches by a lot. Yes, but we can't open the Sears cards anymore, so please stop rubbing it in. DEM wants to know what the multipliers are. QC man wants to verify that it's discontinued. DEM says that. Cold Homer says, I always get my brother scratcher for his birthday. Found out this is like a scratch off lotto card, right? I just found out you can buy scratchers with a credit card in California. Did it on my Wyndham card at a gas station. Awesome. Yuri confirms the Sears card is in fact discontinued. Yes, Rel agrees they're discontinued. Yuri says to DEM, there are no multipliers, but there's great offers every month. I'm not going to go into too much details on a card that doesn't exist anymore. The QC man points out the Sears card exists, but you can't go to a Sears anymore. They're now online only, I believe. Is that right? Yuri says he gets between 45 and 65 points from that card alone every month. Wow. I knew what you were saying, QC man. Wow, beats my prestige. QC man's impressed by Yuri, whispering, I assume MS spending, though. Shenanigans. Shenanigans is the term we use. It beats everything altogether. Our prestige, AT&T, something, and 10 custom caches. It beats them all. Rel is still thinking about that Hampton for 250,000 points, 215,000 points for 4 nights. I'm not going to get into too much detail here. Let's see. Yuri BSU, also known as the other Yuri, comes in and says, sorry, I'm coming in late. Kids have sports. Of course they do. Don Kim says beef tenderloin, probably that little roundish thing. One of these. Is that a beef tenderloin? Or is this the beef tenderloin? I don't know. The Yuris are all out and about today. Rel, micro portions. MR says, I always have to hit the drive-thru on my way back from going to a tasting menu. Dong says, tasting menu is similar to an omakase experience. I don't know nothing about that, I'll be honest. Rel, I read that last comment a little too fast. Yeah, I got to slow down when you read. Brian says, come to Iowa. Tenderloin's as big as your plate. I've always found it funny when you get a tenderloin that's like this big around, but the bun is like this big around. It's like, what's the point? Rel also thinks QC needs to slow down. And insert Billy Madison gif. I'm not sure which one you're referencing, but I don't really want to figure it out in this particular case. Tushar says, can't we wander outside of the hotel for breakfast, though? Absolutely. That's one of the things I said is you may prefer not to do a hotel breakfast. I'm a fan of hotel breakfast. Somehow it tastes better when it's free. I don't know why, but it does. Sleepy Rod says 76,200 city points. That's probably like 3 years of natural spending on 5 custom caches. Yeah. Don Kim would point out that the people in the lobby of the Hampton Inn in York were probably discussing football, not soccer. And I'm sure you're right. QC Man says, do you buy the conspiracy theory that Smokey was actually an arsonist setting all those fires himself? I do, 100%. Rel says, I've been to Council Bluffs and agrees or concurs with Brian Jackson about the size of the Iowa tenderloins. Source King votes for the iPrefer opulence over the everymanness of the Hampton Inn. Tushar points out that you can wander outside the Ground Yark and get a comparable breakfast to the Hampton Inn for under $15 a person. I'd imagine That over 4 days is around $120 for 2 people. Yeah, like I said, if you want to go down the street to Wendy's, you can. I'm sure there's other places that have breakfast. I wonder if Mr. Chippy's, which is their equivalent of Long John Silver's, has breakfast. Gold Homer says, I just got into the Citi system / iPrefer. The way I look at it is this. I always want to stay at a Hyatt, but in locations where iPrefer is the best or only option, you always need a backup with Hyatts. And that is absolutely true. All right, the calendar says we're at 11:30 Central Time, or not quite, and it's not really a calendar. It's more of a clock. Don't know why I said that. So remember, you can support the channel by finding the anonymous, or maybe not wanting to be anonymous, tip jar link down below, or your normal contributions, so on and so forth. Let me make sure I didn't miss anyone, and then we will transition over to our community tab question. I don't think I need to take a bathroom break. I don't think there's very many community tab questions, so let's just get on into it here. Oh, I forgot to take a screenshot. No, I didn't. I remembered. Haha. All right, so every Friday, usually between about 5 and 7 p.m. Central Time, although yesterday I forgot until 9 p.m., I'll post a post on my community tab on my YouTube channel. And on that, I'm going to change the size up here just because I feel like it works better for this segment. There we go. No. Yeah, that's good. Right there. Works better for this particular segment here. This is the picture of the day here. It's some guy who looks a lot like me, but his beard is a lot darker, standing in front of a sign that says normal. Looks like there's kind of a gate behind us. Maybe I'm in prison, and they divide it into 2 sections, psychopathic and normal. Maybe that's what it is. All right, so let's see who guessed correctly and or put a question for me on the community tab last night. Luke D. Johnson asked this question. What makes a hotel stand out as a preferred spot for you? Is it the amenities, location, service, or something else? I asked Luke a clarifying question. I'm not sure if this is a general question or if you're tying this into the theme of the day. Like, what would make a preferred hotel in the generic colloquial sense? Like, what makes you prefer a hotel? Or the I preferred hotel. So I'll actually answer both. What would make me prefer a hotel in terms of the general sense is a Venn diagram grid that is price, hackability, and location. So it has to be in the right location. So like, since I really wanted to go to York, for example, it needed to be in York. And I want it to be some place that's in York, like within the old city, the walled city of York, not like 5 miles out in the suburb, because I didn't want to be taking a bus or a taxi. We didn't have a rental car at that point. So I wanted it to be highly walkable. So there were several hotels that met that criteria. I wanted something that was good enough quality. The Hampton Inn got good reviews, and I'm a Hampton Inn kind of guy, so that worked. And then in terms of hackability or able to pay for it, I was able to use my Aeroplan trick. I was able to get guaranteed connecting rooms. So it kind of checked all the boxes, and that's how I picked it. So it's a Venn diagram that starts with location, but then like I need at least a certain threshold of value. I'm not always going to go for the most cents per points, but combined with features that I want. And then once it hits that threshold, bing, probably the cheapest one of that threshold is going to win out. I've said before, I really like Hampton Inns or any sort of Hilton property that has guaranteed connecting rooms. Now, if you are talking about I preferred hotels, it's going to be some sort of, I want it to be unique. So if I'm looking for a destination here, I'm going to be thinking of like, they have different collections. Let me see if I can find it here. Sharing my screen. So I'm going to want something unique, not just any old thing. So if I go over to filters, they have Historic Hotels of America and Historic Hotels Worldwide. Let me check Historic Hotels Worldwide. Beyond Green, I would also like, not because I'm necessarily like what you would call an environmentalist, but I do like green locations, like mountainsides, looking out over the water, that kind of stuff. So let me just look at those two collections and see what I might come up with. I also want ones that participate in iPrefer. So, only 2 didn't. So now I've got 96 properties. I'm just going to scroll down. Hey, there's the Cavallo Point I pointed out earlier. Here's the Post Inn Ranch in Big Sur, California. I don't know anything about that, but I'm going to look up some details here and just see what it looks like. It describes it as a secluded retreat surrounded by misty redwood forests and Pacific waves. Now that looks unique and it sounds unique. Oh, ooh. I'm like that one gif of the guy holding hands with his girlfriend, like the girlfriend is Salamander Resort. The girl I turn around and look at, ooh, is the Post Ranch Inn. Like, this looks pretty nice. Look at how much are we talking here? I wonder if I can book with, it says right there I can book with points. Let's tell me the rates. Oh, that's money. I don't want money. Oh boy, how do I get back there? I don't know how many points it is, but that's the kind of hotel that I would want. Something that's, something that's pretty unique. I mean, if you're living in a tree house, that's pretty unique and special. So that's how I would choose what kind of iPrefer hotel I would want to have. Catching up on comments here. Oh, we already talked about that. Gold Homer says, so I just got into the Citi system. I prefer the way I look at it is I always want, we already read that comment. Whoops. Yuri said, in Medellin, there are 2 Prefer hotels and 1 Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I booked the Mr. and Mrs. for one night at 16.5 Hyatt points, 1,000, to pick up an additional Hyatt brand. Dennis Dunn arrived a little late, but better late than never. Hey, gang. How you doing, Dennis? Yuri says, iPrefer costs 7.5 1,000 thank you points in Medellin, and it's better than the Mr. and Mrs. Smith. QC Man says Normal, Illinois, ? MR says Normal, Illinois. That's where I'm from, probably on the Amtrak platform. Ding, 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 ding. Celebrate, celebrate. You win, MR. Yes, we are talking about Normal, Illinois. Somebody else got this in the comment section, so I'll give you both. What's a normal amount of points? Like 5,000? So, MR, you get 5,000 points, Dugroz points. Congratulations. And I'll give the person who guessed it first correctly. So yes, if you scratch out the scratchy outy part, you can see that this is in fact Normal, Illinois, and the Amtrak station. It's a joint venture from Maximura Fishworks and Tamaraguchi Heavy Manufacturing Concern. Mr. Spuckle. Sorry, I said joint venture and I got off. If you know the Simpsons reference, you know the reference. It's a joint venture between the Illinois Department of Transportation and Amtrak because they have a Greyhound bus station in the same station. They call it like Uptown Station. They're Normal. And there's a song called Uptown Funk. I barely know it, but in my head, anytime I see this, I think Uptown Station gonna na na na, Uptown Station gonna na na na. So this is right next to a Hyatt Place, which is one reason you might want to stay there. And in the Hyatt Place, they have a very standard Hyatt couch. It's right along the railroad tracks there in Normal, Illinois. And this is the hometown of Illinois State University. So the reason I went there is I drove to Normal, spent the night in a Normal hotel, and then I took the Normal Amtrak station on Amtrak down to Springfield. This was a couple years ago. It was my first time going to Springfield, Illinois, and saw the Lincoln Homestead and the Lincoln Museum. It wasn't until like 2 years later I saw the Lincoln grave. And while you're there, you can also go by the Normal post office. I've got a video, but I think I'll skip it because it's not easy to play right now. All right, back to the community tab questions. Opening up my phone here. Ron Burns says you could stay at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. with preferred points. Leave your tape recorder at home. That's true. And I responded, I looked into that hotel, the Watergate, when we went to D.C. in the summer of 24. I decided against it. You can even stay in the room. Probably not with iPrefer points, but if you book direct, you can stay in like the Nixon scandal room. Someone anonymously said it looks like a fairly normal picture to me. Let's see. Luke D. Johnson guessed Normal, Illinois train station. Ding, 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 ding. So, Luke, you also get 5,000 Dugroz points. Boom, there you go. Yuri BSU says, Doug, can you point me to a video, if you made one, where you compare premium credit card travel protections, such as Capital One Venture X versus the Ritz card? Thank you in advance. Well, you're welcome in advance. Unfortunately, I'm going to be a big disappointment here, Yuri, because I've never made a video of that nature. You're like the fourth person to ask me to, so maybe I should sometime. Sorry. If you're watching this after the fact and you want to see a video about travel protections, let me know. I know it'd be a big investment, but maybe someday I can do that. I'll catch up on comments real quick, and then we'll finish up with the community tab. By the way, MR, I didn't know you're from Normal. Awesome. Dennis Dunn says, iPrefer has some nice hotels in Ireland. Yeah, we reviewed one of them. It was called Castle Martyr near Cork, Ireland. Gold Homer says, I've seen that property in Big Sur on the website. I don't think it's books or with points. Was that the one we were mentioning over here, the Post Inn Ranch in Big Sur, California? Yeah, I was trying to see if I could book it on points, but without logging in, I wasn't able to, and I would prefer not to type my password in while I'm online with everybody else, just in case of stuff. Rel says, the Post Ranch Inn looked very lovely driving by it. QC Man says, don't cheat on the salamander, Doug. And Salamander's getting jelly. I see what you did there. QC Man is laughing. We are laughing. QC Man wants to know if I visited the nuclear power plant in Springfield. I did not. Interestingly, if you drive across Illinois towards Chicago from the Quad Cities, you will drive by a nuclear power plant. That's a little further north. Gold Homer, yeah, I don't think Big Sur is a points bookable property. Doggone it. So just because I filtered by iPrefer participating doesn't mean it's points bookable. Apparently, there are some iPrefer properties at which you can earn points, but not redeem points, which is dumb. Get your act together, iPrefer. Next community tab question is the very last one. This is from Ron Byrne. What was your favorite Nintendo game as a child? My kids got me a system to play original Nintendo games for my birthday recently. Ooh, this is a difficult question and an excellent question. There's so many I liked. I loved Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I loved all three of the Mario Brothers, Super Mario 1, 2, and 3. I had Excite Bike. I had Section Z. I had Archon. I had DuckTales. That's a good one. I borrowed Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, and I really liked that one. I had Zelda 1, Zelda 2. I had RBI Baseball. That was a great game, too. However, if you've held my feet to the fire and forced me to pick a favorite, I think I would say the original Legend of Zelda. I mean, the music is iconic, if nothing else. It's also got a special place in my heart because that's the first game I ever bought. I got the Nintendo, the NES, that had no gun with it. So the cartridge was just Super Mario Brothers. And I remember when I got it, I told my dad, I don't need other games. I'll be happy just playing this one game that it comes with. So, yeah. Legend of Zelda was the first game I actually got. I don't remember if I bought it with my own money or if it was a gift, but just putting that in and playing it, and I beat the first dungeon within, an hour or so, and it's like, whoa. I had the it wasn't the very first, maybe it was the first ever Nintendo Power Magazine had a fold-out map. It was the one you could get for free. I still have it. It's in terrible condition, so probably no resale value. But yeah, I think Legend of Zelda, the original, will always be my favorite for both objective and subjective reasons. Let's see. QC Man's trying to prod the algorithm. Donates $1.99. Celebrate. Thank you, QC Man, for the super sticker. Luke Johnson says, I'd like to cash my 5,000 Dugroz points for 1 cent a piece. That is not an option. We've got Bennigan's Country Supply Store, We've got Vicasas, but only in West Virginia and Iowa, and we're working on Casey's, but I don't know what the ratio is going to be. Mike Newland was a huge fan of Tecmo Bowl. I have played Tecmo Bowl since, but I never had it in my childhood. Kevin Wynn is here and says, I'm crazy. Wells Fargo have 2 years before released new credit card. Oh, excuse me. If I'm crazy, Wells Fargo has 2 years before releasing new credit card from Wells Fargo, not including co-branded credit cards. I don't think you're crazy. I think you're right. It has definitely been a while. QC man, I'm kind of just holding off on Wells Fargo until I see what their elite offering is going to be, which may happen. QC man loves Super Mario 1 and 3, not so much 2. 2 is completely different. It's like the ugly stepchild. Of course, all of us fans know it was originally based on a Japanese game called Doki Doki Panic, with a whole separate set of characters. But it does hold a special place in my heart. And I like the fact that they have moved some of the characters like Shy Guy into the more modern games. Rel says, I heard Springfield Nuclear Power Plant accepts those points. RoboCop was a good NES game. I never had it. YouTube Experiments driving home from work. Thanks for being here. Bo Jackson was insane on the Tecmo Bowl. So for a limited time, Nintendo of America released, I don't remember what it's called, like a NES Mini. It's like a little port that has like 50 games in it, and that's one of them. And yeah, with Bo Jackson, you can literally start at the 20-yard line, run all the way to the 1-yard line, run all the way back to the other 1-yard line, then run all the way back and score a touchdown, and no one can tackle you. Brian Jackson is a fan of Tractor Supply. There's a Tractor Supply, or at least there was until recently, in our hometown of Ottumwa, Iowa. Brian and I are from the same town. Source King says, beating Mike Tyson is my greatest accomplishment to this day. That is an accomplishment. I'm 40x years old and have still never done that without using a cheat code, like a Game Genie or something like that. Did you beat him straight up, or did you use a cheat code? I have to know. Dennis Dunn will take a burger at Bennigan's, maybe the Big Irish Burger. Yuri G said something in a language that I can't read. I think it's Greek, but please don't quote me on that. Gold Homer just looked up the Big Sur in the app, logged in, not bookable with points. Doggone it. Okay, Ian says, my mom's wife. Nope, that would mean something completely different. My wife's mom used to hand draw the Zelda maps, RIP. I'm sorry that your mom's no longer with us. Is your mother-in-law closer in age to me than you are? If so, that just made me feel like I aged about a whole decade. But yes, hand-drawing maps would be awesome. And if your mom was still with us and I could meet her and watch her do that, I would be very impressed. Yuri G says the Attune was released not long ago, a bit more than a year ago. Maybe we could say rewards type cards. Sleepy Rod says, so what was the conclusion? Sorry, I was late. So if you're going to use your valuable city points to book an iPrefer hotel, 5 times out of 6, it was more efficient to do it directly with iPrefer at a 1-to-4 transfer ratio than it was 1-to-2 over to Choice Hotels. Having said that, we had a discussion at the end of is this a value trap? You could just get a Hampton Inn with free breakfast instead for about the same number of points. And what we said is it just comes down to, you prefer a Dr. Doog style of travel or a Mr. Ra style of travel. What I said is I think iPrefer is good for me once a year. Kevin Wynn says the Wells Fargo Elite card is going to be a Visa Infinite or a Visa Signature. By the way, the only reason why I know how to pronounce the last name Wynn is because I was the treasurer of my homeowners association. Glad I'm not part of that anymore. For 2 years, and we had a resident with the same last name, and I kept saying Nagayan. Sorry. But eventually I was like, I should probably look this up, and realized I was pronouncing it wrong the whole time. David Williams says the first Zelda is hard. No cracks in walls. You have to burn every bush. Well, if you were subscribed to the Nintendo Fun Club or Nintendo Power, you would have a leg up. Sleepy Rod says City to iPrefer is good when it's available. That was kind of a conclusion. Don Kim says 2 Bo Jackson plays, running up on the wall and trying to call timeout during AB, then smashing a home run. That must be a different Nintendo game. Was there a baseball game that Bo Jackson was known for? Is that RBI Baseball or a different one? There was also a Nintendo game just called Baseball. It was one of those original 30-ish Nintendo games. Source King referencing beating Mike Tyson. Straight up no cheating at 2 a.m. on a school night. Woke up my not too pleased mom. That is awesome. You are a legend. I just hereby declare it. I do want to actually pull up a picture here. Oh, if I can find it. I used it on a different video not too long ago. If you look up my video that was about my trip to Albany, New York, there was a really cool graphic. Bear with me, folks. I know this is a little boring, but I swear it's going to be worth it. I just have to find it. Here it is. Sorry. I'm going to find a picture of something that's very, very on topic. Oh, where did it go? Come back. You ever drag and drop a picture into a folder and it just randomly disappears? Here we are. Okay. There it is, right there. Doon 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 doon. I later found out that the theme song was based on like an old TV show from like the 1950s. It was something like the Boxing Roundup Hour sponsored by Gillette, like the razor company. And they had a theme song that went like this. You look sharp and you feel sharp too. Use razors in a big canoe. I may not have the exact words, but I read a blog once. Some guy said, like, in 1988, I got my first copy of Mike Tyson's Punch Out, put it in the machine. And when the theme started, my dad started singing along with it. I'm like, how in the world do you know this song? He's like, oh, that's the boxing song from the 1950s or something like that. So I do still own the game. I still own the box. It's got to be worth something, right? Let's see. Where were we? Oh, my word. I gotten way behind on comments here. Okay, straight up, no cheating. That is very impressive. Woke up my not too pleased mom. I have to imagine 8 to 10-year-old Source King was like, yes, at 2 a.m. when he finally beat Mike Tyson. Is it Russian or Greek? We're wondering, Yuri. And he says it's Cyrillic script. Awesome, which is very similar to Greek. Okay. Kevin Wynn says, I live in West Coast, California. To Big Sur is about 2 hours from where I live. Dennis Dunn says stop sign. I don't know what that's referencing. I apologize. Yuri says I've been to Big Sur countless times. Sandman's triple uppercut always got me. That was, oh man, when you just see this giant Sandman coming at you, you just about soiled yourself. YouTube will copyright is what we're afraid of. Me singing the Mike Tyson song. Hopefully not. All right. There was one last thing that I was supposed to go over. Somebody asked me earlier in the program, what was it? The best hotel experience I had ever had. And I had a little fragmented part of my memory working on it. And I have to say it crashed and I wasn't able to think of one. So I'll just come up with one in a general sense. This may not be my favorite, but it's pretty good. All right. So the same summer that we went to Washington, D.C., so in April of 2024, I went to Virginia and West Virginia. I flew into Charlottesville, Virginia, which is on sort of the western edge of the state. It's hard to say edge because it's diagonal, but it's right about there. And that's a very historic town. That's where Thomas Jefferson's Monticello is. That's where James Monroe's hometown is. So you can get in a couple presidential graves visit easily. You go about next county seat over and you hit James Madison's grave. And excuse me. So the second 2 nights I stayed at the Kimpton property right there in Charlottesville, which is on the campus of University of Virginia Law Center. And the hotel itself and the buildings of the campus are all in the colonial style. They aren't obviously original colonial buildings, but they're in that style. So just, I don't know, the time of year, I went out for a walk at sunset, just walking around the grounds and the campus of this very beautiful university. The meal was great. The service was good. It was just like, it was upscale enough to feel a little bit posh without being over the top. So I'll say that was my best hotel experience. I've never had a real terrible hotel experience. The closest I came maybe was the very first time we used a Vacasa. The property was just amazing. It was this cabin in northern Wisconsin, but they had like one of the worst storms they'd had in 5 years, and the electricity went out. I can't blame the place for that, but it's also on a pumped water well system, which means, and no one told us this, but if the electricity goes out, you're able to flush the toilet about 50 times or take about 2 showers before you lose running water. So we actually had to leave the hotel because the power went out once for about a day and a half. Then it came back on. It went out again for about 4 hours. So there was the equivalent of 2 whole days out of our 7-day stay where we didn't have electricity. I thought for sure we would get all of our points for those 2 days refunded. It was like 13,500 points per day, but they only refunded like 8,000 points. And when I pointed out, they basically said something like, well, you chose to leave the hotel, or you chose to leave the Vacasa. And I was like, oh, that's not a very good argument. I mean, if you checked into a Holiday Inn and it had no electricity and no running water halfway through your stay, would they charge you for those days? Anyway, that's a disadvantage to a place where it's like an independent owner but administered by a third-party company. So I'm still cool with Vacasas overall, but just note that if something goes wrong, there's really no one there to help you. Don Kim says, what about the handheld Tiger gaming devices or the old school Game & Watch devices? I never had a Game & Watch. I had one Tiger game. I don't even remember which one it was. Ironically, Brian will know what I'm talking about. There was a kid who called me Nintendo Boy because I had a Tiger handheld game. Gold Homer says the cash price at the Big Sur Treehouse is about $2,800 a night. That's outside of my budget. Kevin Wynn says, you remember the old Capital One Saver with the one with an annual fee? Yes, that was the one that got 4x on entertainment and 4x on grocery, I think. I remember it. Is Big Sur on FHR? And Sleepy Ron wants to know, would I ever do a Motel 6 stay still? Not unless I was in a situation where I had no other choice. That's I don't really want to go below that, like Hampton Inn, Fairfield Inn level. You know, I did a Wyndham, Wingate by Wyndham once. That's kind of my threshold if I have a choice. Actually, when I had that Vacasa incident, it was in northern Wisconsin, and like right along the UP of Michigan, Wisconsin border, there's a town called Hurley, Wisconsin, and we stayed at the Days Inn there for one night. My thought was like, well, I can use the exact same amount of Wyndham points to offset this night that I'm going to undoubtedly get refunded. And then it wasn't refunded. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, everyone, so much. Let's catch up on everyone who donated today. Ian M. dropped $1.99. Mike Newland gifted 20 memberships. Dad on a Mission has been a member for 9 months. We celebrated that. QC Man gifted 1 membership. Miles to the Mouse joined as a member. Mike Newland then also gave the $1.49 elusive super sticker. Double Animal Fries dropped $2, which we appreciate. John R. dropped $2. Tom Graber gifted 1 membership, and QC Man came in strong with a $1.99 super sticker. I also have an anonymous donation over on the tip jar of $100. Thank you so much, whoever you are. I really appreciate it. And then MR gave a tip jar tip of $14. So to each and every one of you, I say celebrate, celebrate. Thank you so much. And as always, may your spending be frugal and may your points be plenteous. Thanks for watching.